Hey, I'm Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite mechanisms. With a caveat, which is that I've already done a video about my top 10 favorite mechanisms. And in creating this video, I decided to pick 10 completely different mechanisms that I love finding in games, that I love discovering. I love designing around these mechanisms. You'll definitely see some Stonemaier games on this list. And yeah, they just don't overlap. And actually, my previous list I'm looking at had 12 games on it. I will link to that video in the description and at the end of this video. But I want to let you know that this is a new top 10 that purposely does not overlap with the previous top 10. And I actually found that I have even more than that. So I will probably do another video on this subject as well. So yeah, these are my favorite mechanisms to discover in games, and I will share a few examples of games that feature these mechanisms as we go. So let's add the other screen here. Here we go. So number 10 is closed drafting. In closed drafting, this is when you have a hand of something, typically cards, but not always, as I'll talk about in this video. And you have a hand of something, and you are choosing one or two of the things from your hand, and then you are passing what remains in your hand to the next player. And then they select something and put it into play. You're typically building something with these things that you are drafting. I really love closed drafting. I love having that feeling. Like, it reminds me of Magic the Gathering, of a Magic the Gathering draft where you get this new batch of things. You're opening a new pack essentially in Magic, but in these other games, you're just getting a random assortment of cards or tiles or tokens, and you get to figure out what is best for your strategy at that moment. And it has built-in player interaction because whatever you pick is not going to be available for the next player. The game that I wanted to use as an example for this over here on the screen is Between Two Castles. This is a Stonemaier game where you are drafting tiles. You're picking two tiles, and one of the tiles is going on in the castle on your left that you're building with your neighbor. The other is going on the castle on the right. We also have a game called Between Two Cities, which is kind of like a simpler version of Between Two Castles. The classic closed drafting game is Seven Wonders. I love Seven Wonders. I'm happy to play Seven Wonders anytime. I mentioned Magic. I love the drafting format in Magic. And I also wanted to mention Draftosaurus, because in Draftosaurus, you are drafting dinosaur meeples. So we have meeples, we have tiles, we have cards. There's lots of things that you can use in closed drafting. My number 10 favorite mechanism. Before I continue, actually, no, I'll do that in another video. Next up, we have the legacy mechanism. So a legacy game, or a legacy as a mechanism, is when the decisions that you make, or some of the decisions that you make in a game, have permanent consequences. These games feature permanent changes that cannot be undone. And those are crucial elements of it, that you cannot undo these changes. This isn't a persistent campaign where you happen to just carry over some elements, but you can always repack it as the same thing. Legacy features permanence, and permanence has a powerful psychological impact. When you decide to make a decision in a legacy game, you can't undo it, and that means something. That has a certain type of meaning that you don't see in many other games. The example I have on the screen here is, of course, my game Charterstone. This is a village building game where the main legacy element is that you are putting stickers on the board to build a village. You're in charge of one charter, one portion of this village, where you're putting worker placement action spaces in the form of stickers, and players can freely use this village. So even though it's a competitive game, you are building this village together with you in charge of a specific part of it. There are other legacy parts of the game, but the main element of permanence are the stickers that you are placing on the board. That's in Charterstone. I also loved playing through My Island, which is a polyomino game where you are over the course of a game, you are placing tiles on a grid, and then at the end of the game, based on what you placed or didn't place, you will add some stickers or marks to the board that permanently change it for the next game in little ways. I liked My Island because it's a quick, snappy game. You can play a bunch of games in the same sitting. And also The King's Dilemma. The King's Dilemma was a delightful legacy game where you are serving as a king's council in this competitive game. So you are bribing each other to make certain decisions throughout the game. And really the main impact that the decisions have is when you make the whole game is like voting on these decisions that impact the kingdom. And when you make a decision, oftentimes each decision will have you go down a different path and unlock a new set of cards. And the King's Dilemma of any Legacy game, you probably could repack these cards back together into the game, but there's so many different cards that you're pulling out and others that you are completely ignoring that it would be fairly difficult to repack it. It's still a Legacy game. There are permanent decisions that you're making in the King's Dilemma. But yeah, Charterstone is my example here. Next up at number 9, this was my Legacy example. Here is one of my favorite mechanisms, variable and asymmetric player powers. And my favorite version of this, as you can see in my game Scythe here, my favorite version of this is when you are pairing two asymmetric powers together. So in Scythe, you have a player mat that is different than the other player mats that determines different ways that you can build your engine in the game. All of the actions that you can take in Scythe are on your player mat. And there is a faction mat. So you have a unique faction in the game. So you're pairing your unique faction with your unique player mat. Let's see if I can zoom in here and get a close. There we go. There's a close-up of the player mat and the faction mat together. I really like this idea of asymmetric pairings. It gives you a lot of variety in the game. While it's difficult to balance as a designer, perhaps even impossible to perfectly balance, you can get pretty close. And I love games that offer replayability in the form of asymmetry. Even as I'm playing one faction, I'm kind of getting, I'm delving deep into it. I'm trying to do what that faction wants me to do, but I'm also curious about what these other factions at the table are doing. So that's Scythe for variable player powers or asymmetric player powers. I also really enjoy different takes on it, like in Marvel Dice Throne. It has very different asymmetric powers in this dice rolling game. And Star Wars deck building. And in Marvel Dice Throne, you have your own unique deck of cards for your character. And in Star Wars deck building, the asymmetry comes from the way that you can interact with cards. Like if I'm playing as the Empire, I can recruit Darth Vader from the Galaxy Row into my deck. But the other player is trying to remove Darth Vader from the Galaxy Row before I even have the chance of recruiting Darth Vader. So I really like how the asymmetry in Star Wars deck building kind of plays into two different interactions with every card based on who you are in the game. All right, so that is asymmetric powers. Let's go to Japan as the example here for card stacking. This is definitely a fairly new to me mechanism that I'm really enjoying. In card stacking, the order in which you play or insert cards matters. So in Let's Go to Japan, you are planning out a week in Japan, a trip to Japan for a week. And as you add things to each day, you are deciding the order of operations for that day. So you're either sliding in cards underneath other cards, or you're leaving it completely revealed and face up. This matters because the things revealed at the top of the card are resources that you're going to gain in this order. So when you start Wednesday, you'll gain these 2 food resources and you'll lose a little bit of money. And so on throughout the day. You'll gain these benefits throughout the day. And then the card that is fully revealed gives you a benefit at the bottom. So you get, if you can pay this cost or cover this cost, you get this benefit at the bottom of the card. I really like this balance in a card stacking game like Let's Go to Japan of what ongoing resources am I going to leave exposed at the top of the card versus what card will be my highlight of the day, my main feature, as is the case in Let's Go to Japan, to reveal the things at the bottom. Another example of this is the cooperative game Daybreak. Daybreak has a lot of card stacking that you do. Just a lot of great decisions go into this mechanism. So that's card stacking at number 7. At number 6, I have the mechanism of increasing action options. Here's an old photo here of Lords of Waterdeep. So Lords of Waterdeep, you start out with a fairly tight worker placement board, but one of the main things you're doing in the game, or one of the things that you can do in the game that often ends up happening, is that you construct buildings. And those buildings become new worker placement action spaces that anyone can place their worker on. So you start out with very few actions, but as the game grows, and I think that's great because at the beginning of the game, you're kind of figuring out, it's great for 2 reasons. One, you're figuring out what you want to do, and given you 200 options at the beginning of the game would be a lot, but giving you 7 options is something that's very easy to teach and learn and get back into. Whereas during the game, as you grow in power, you probably want more variety of options, especially as you understand the game. Also, having few options early on lets you understand the economy of the game. What is X worth as compared to Y? And then you can change that economy based on the buildings that you construct. In many of these games, including Lords of Waterdeep, I think one of the cool things is that since I am the one that built a certain building, whenever another player uses that building, I get a little benefit as a result. So there's a strong incentive to build to construct buildings early on. Even if you are the one using them, you get a benefit. But if someone else uses them, you get a benefit just for them using it. Some other examples of this are Lost Ruins of Arnak and Caverna. These are both games that have a wonderful range of increasing action options during the game. At number 5, we have Expeditions, another game for me. So this example is for hand management, managing a hand of cards. And specifically, I'm referring to the mechanism where there is no randomness in terms of the cards that are coming into your hand, unlike deck building, where there's you're getting a random hand of cards every time you draw cards. In this form of hand management, which I learned about for the first time from Concordia, you have a set number of cards in your hand. Oftentimes, many of the rules of the game are explained on the cards. You don't even need a ton of rules overhead. The cards will tell you what to do when you play the card. And when you play a card, you put it into play, and you don't get to replay that card until you take a turn to bring all your cards back into hand. So in Expeditions, you have a hand of cards. You start with a few cards. That hand will grow pretty considerably over the course of the game. You'll put cards into play, and even when you gain cards, they will go into the play area. And then at certain times, you'll take a refresh action and pull all those cards back to your hand. Expeditions has the little twist where you actually, if you want to, you can also place workers on those cards. So typically, you're gaining the benefit at the upper left of the card. If you place a worker, that's when you gain the benefit at the bottom of the card. You're using a worker to fully leverage that ability. As I mentioned, Concordia also has this mechanism, does a great job with this mechanism. And Aquatica was also, I think, inspired by this hand management mechanism from Concordia. Really great mechanism. I love to see it in any game that has it. That's number 5, hand management. At number 4, we have this is almost a category of games, but it is a mechanism that I've come to really appreciate. And this is what I'm calling dual-cleverness limited communication. So these are often party, social, or cooperative games, or all of the above. In this case, I have caution signs. There's also Clover and Blob Party. So in these types of games, you get to be clever in 2 different ways. In caution signs, for example, you have around 20 seconds to draw an image that represents, in this case, in this example, a flexible cow. So you are trying to be clever in terms of what you draw to help someone correctly guess what you're drawing. So you be clever through what you're drawing. In Clover or Blob Party, you're trying to be clever in terms of the words that you're choosing to use in the game. And you can't express any more than that. You are expressing yourself through a drawing or a word in these other games. But then you also get to be clever in these games when you're trying to guess what people actually wrote. So in caution signs, whenever you have the role of the guesser, you get to feel clever by trying to correctly match up these cards because they're scattered, they're randomized. You don't know which card went with which drawing. They're all scattered together. You have to decide which goes to which card. Same thing with Clover. It happens kind of in real time with all players working together, other than the player who presented the Clover, to try to pair the cards in Clover with the words that were chosen. Blob Party, you get to be clever. I guess in Blob Party, you're really just being clever in one way in terms of the word that you're guessing. But you're also trying to work together with the blobs in Blob Party to choose the right word to present. But I really love this idea of being clever in 2 different ways with limited communication in these cooperative party style games. That's number 4. Number 3, I have player mat grids. This is a component / mechanism that I've really come to appreciate in games. I like building things in games, and I like when player mat grids, especially slightly asymmetric player mat grids, give me a spatial puzzle to figure out right in front of me. And I think the spatial element is key to this. I have a video about this fairly recently about all the different things that you can do with these grids. You can have when covered benefits. You can have when placed benefits. You can have when completed benefits. When you complete a certain area, you can even expand your map beyond what you were originally given. The image that I have here, I should have said this, is Apiary. Apiary is our competitive bees in space game, and each player has their own hive map that they're filling up with tiles and expanding beyond what the original map they have if they are able to do that with a frame. You get benefits when you fill up your map, when you cover things, when you place certain tiles. Other examples of this are Ark Nova, Castles in Burgundy, Planet Unknown. These are all examples of games that have player mat grids that are really satisfying to work with. So that's player mat grids. And number 3. At number 2, we have ramping. Ramping as a mechanism is one that I've really come to enjoy in games. This is when a game starts off very simply and the complexity and the scope of it increases as you play. The example I've showed here is Skull King. So in Skull King, this is a trick-taking game. In the first round of Skull King, everyone is just playing one card. The whole round is just each player playing one card. And you are also bidding in Skull King. You're trying to guess how many hands or how many tricks you will win in that round. So it's a binary choice in this first round. You're either going to win one or you're going to win zero. In the next round, though, you're playing 2 cards and then 3 cards, all the way up to around 10 cards based on the player count. I love this ramping mechanism. I love how there's just a feeling of this growing complexity and depth within a short amount of time during the game as you're trying to, as you must play more and more cards in Skull King, or in the mind as you have a bigger hand of cards, or in the crew, another trick-taking game. In this case, a cooperative trick-taking game. In the crew, the complexity is growing from the challenge of the achievements that you're trying to complete, the tasks that you're trying to complete in the crew. But yeah, I love this idea of starting very simply and getting more and more difficult, more and more complex, and increasing the scope within the context of a single game like Skull King. That's the ramping mechanism at number 2. And finally, at number 1, we have tableau building. One of my all-time favorite mechanisms now. It didn't make my previous list, but I don't know why, but I love tableau building. And I'm specifically referring to tableau building with cards, where you have a big deck of cards and you are building your own unique tableau, whether it's with or without a player mat, as in Finspan shown here, to create something that didn't exist before. So you're creating your ocean in Finspan. Cards have when played abilities, they have end of game abilities, they have if activated abilities, and even just by having a card in certain places in your tableau gives you an ongoing benefit in Finspan, similar to our games Wingspan and Wyrmspan. I also love the tableau building in Earth, in Ark Nova and Creature Caravan. And one of the things I've really come to appreciate about some of these games that have tableau building is that not only are you playing cards into your tableau, but you're also, the tableau is a living thing. Like in Finspan, you have these eggs that turn to young, that turn to schools, and you're moving around the young in the schools. In Wingspan, you have eggs on certain cards. You're tucking cards. You're caching resources on cards. Same in Wyrmspan, you have eggs, cache resources, tucked cards. Earth has this element of growth where you have these 2 different types of tokens that you're putting on the cards on Earth. In Creature Caravan, you have tokens, you have dice that you're putting on and off in cards. So I love these living tableaus of cards. And many of them do have a spatial element. Not all of them do. Like Creature Caravan does not have a spatial element to it. So I think that can be in these games. But in general, I love the elements of tableau building in games. So those are my 10. I'm not going to say my 10 favorite mechanisms in games, but they are 10 of my favorite mechanisms to see in games. I get really excited when I see games that have these mechanisms. I'll also link, as I said, to the previous list so you can see another 12 mechanisms that I really, truly love. And I probably will have one list in the future that showcases 10 more mechanisms that I really love and some examples of each. I'd love to hear your favorite picks. If you resonate with this, if a few of these that I mentioned are also your favorite mechanisms, let me know, say your top 3 and your number 1 game in each of those categories. Let me know about that in the comments below. Thanks.